Hi everybody, I'm glad you came to hear a story today. Hi Natasha, what's for breakfast today? Today we're doing the story Ada Twist, Scientist. Do any of you think of yourselves as scientists? Do any of you like to ask lots of questions? Do you like to try to figure out why things happen or how things work? Do you like to experiment? If you said yes to any of those things, then you might be a scientist. This is about a girl named Ada who thinks she is definitely a scientist and how that goes in her family. I'm going to take the book jacket off again so it doesn't flop around while I'm reading. Let's see if this book looks the same underneath or different. Oh, looks different. And check out the back. Sometimes the art on the outside of books is as interesting as the things inside the book. Let's check out our title page. Ada Twist, Scientist is by Andrea Beatty and illustrated by David Roberts. It's published by Abrams Books for Young Readers, who has given us permission to share this book with you online while we can't see you in person. Ada Marie, said not a word till the day she turned 3. She bounced in her crib and looked all around, observing the world, but not making a sound. She learned how to climb and made her big break, with a trail of chaos left in her wake. She ran through the day chasing each sound in sight and didn't slow down till she conked out at night. Oh my, that is a trail of chaos, isn't it? And look where she conked out, on top of the dresser. I think maybe they chose to have the character of Ada not learn to talk until she's 3, to make her like another very famous scientist named Albert Einstein. If you have some extra time today, look up Albert Einstein on Pebble Go or in World Book Online and see what you can find out about that famous scientist. Email me if you need the login information for those resources. Her parents were frazzled, but tried not to freak as Ada grew bigger and still did not speak. Clearly, young Ada, with lots in her head, would have something to say when it ought to be said. That's just what happened when Ada turned 3. She tore through the house on a fact-finding spree and climbed up the clock just as high as she could. Her parents yelled, "Stop!" as all good parents would. Ada's chin quivered, but she did not cry. She took a deep breath and she simply asked, "Why?" If you ever hang out with little kids, toddlers, and preschoolers, they ask that question a lot. Why does it tick and why does it talk? Why don't we call it a granddaughter clock? Why are there pointy things stuck to a rose? Why are there hairs up inside of your nose? She started with why and then what, how, and when. By bedtime, she came back to why once again. She drifted to sleep as her dazed parents smiled at the curious thoughts of their curious child, who wanted to know what the world was about. They kissed her and whispered, "You'll figure it out." Her parents kept up with their high-flying kid, whose questions and chaos both grew as she did. So here we can see Ava getting bigger and bigger, and the kinds of messes she makes as she tries to figure out the world scientifically, and the kinds of questions and questions and questions she asks. Looks like she's wondering about the solar system over here. Even Miss Greer found her hands were quite full when young Ada's chaos wreaked havoc at school. But this much was clear about Miss Ada Twist. She had all the traits of a great scientist. Do you recognize that picture? There it is. Now, great scientists don't just go around making messes. They're asking questions and trying to figure things out. Ada was busy that first day of spring, testing the sounds that make mockingbirds sing, when a horrible stench whacked right in the nose, a pungent aroma that curled up her toes. Zowie, said Ada, which got her to thinking, what is the source of that terrible stinking? Do you have any guesses looking carefully at this illustration? What might be the source of the terrible stinking? I think it might be stinky feet. How does a nose know there's something to smell? And does it still stink if there's no nose to tell? She rattled off questions and tapped on her chin. She'd start at the start where she ought to begin. A mystery, a riddle, a puzzle, a quest. This was the moment that Ada loved best. Ada did research to learn all she could. Oh, look at her smelling. Of smelling and smells, both the stinky and good. One hypothesis Ada thought could be true. The terrible stink came from Dad's cabbage stew. She tested and tested, but soon Ada knew it was time to come up with hypothesis 2. A hypothesis, when you're doing science, is an educated guess about what you think is going to happen. She thought the stink was the cabbage stew. A lot of times it turns out your hypothesis isn't right. And that's okay. That doesn't mean your experiment failed. You learn something from that, too. You learn that you need to ask another question. Then zowie, the stink struck again, just like that. Hypothesis 2? It's caused by the cat. The cat couldn't make such a stink on its own. It needed perfume and some fancy cologne. So young Ada tested. The test was a flop. Then she started again, but her parents yelled, "Stop!" Thank goodness. Never put a cat into a washing machine. Ada Marie, to the thinking chair now by the time we count 3. Enough, said her mother. That's it, said her dad. Her parents were frustrated, frazzled, and mad. Why? Ada questioned. Her mother said, no. What? Ada queried. Her father said, go. You've ruined our supper. You've made the cat stink. Enough with your questions. Now sit there and think. She looked at her parents. Her heart turned to goo. Poor Ada Twist didn't know what to do. She sat all alone by herself in the hall, and Ada once more could say nothing at all. And so Ada sat, and she sat, and she sat, and she thought about science, and stew, and the cat, and how her experiments made such a big mess. Does it have to be so? Is that part of success? Are messes a problem? And while she was thinking, what was the source of that terrible stinking? Ada Marie did what scientists do. She asked a small question, and then she asked 2. And each of those led her to 3 questions more, and some of those questions resulted in 4. As Ada got thinking, she really dug in. She scribbled her questions and tapped on her chin. She started at why, and then what, how, and when. At the end of the hall, she reached why once again. Not sure how her parents will feel about her doing her thinking by drawing on the walls. Her parents calmed down and they came back to talk. They looked at the hallway and just had to gawk. Can you show me your best gawk? No patch of bare paint could be seen on the wall. The thinking chair now was the great thinking hall. They watched their young daughter and sighed as they did. What would they do with this curious kid who wanted to know what the world was about? They smiled and whispered, we'll figure it out. And that's what they did, because that's what you do when your kid has a passion and heart that is true. They remade their world. Now they're all in the act of helping young Ada sort fiction from fact. She asked lots of questions. How could she resist? It's all in the heart of a young scientist. It looks like she's got her whole family on board, helping her out, doing research, buying her tools, giving her space. Do you think she'll find out what's making the stink? And as for that smell, what can Ada Twist do but learn all she can with her friends in grade 2? Oh, she's a second grader. Will they discover the stink that curls toes? Well, that is the question. And someday, who knows? Looks like they've each got their jar with some kind of scent. And that's where they leave us. What do you think? If you would like to experiment and ask why and how and questions like that today, please make sure you've got permission from a grown-up before you start any of your own experiments, especially the kind that might result in a mess. But if you do ask some questions or figure some things out, email me and let me know. See you later.